Right now, as you are reading this, there are two types of families in this country. One type already gets what I am about to lay out. The other type is going to find out the hard way, standing in a Costco freezer aisle sometime next year, staring at a metal shelf with nothing on it, wondering what the hell happened to the food that was always just there. Because Costco is not going to send you a letter. They are not going to put up a banner that says, "Hey, heads up, things are getting weird." What they are doing is quietly pulling back on orders for specific frozen items, trimming how much they bring in, and letting the gaps on the shelf speak for themselves if you know how to read them. I am going to walk you through every single one of these items. Not guesses, not panic content, not some conspiracy theory stitched together from Reddit posts. Just the supply chain math, the government data, and the shelf patterns that tell you exactly what is thinning out and why. I have read the USDA reports, the Trade Commission rulings, the earnings calls from the producers themselves. This is what they are saying when you strip out the corporate language and lay the numbers flat. And the last item on this list is sitting at a supply level this country has not touched in roughly 60 years. That is not an exaggeration. That is what the federal data says. So stick around for that one, because it is going to change how you look at the most ordinary item in your freezer. Let us get into it. Number 10. Frozen mixed vegetables start with the most boring thing in the freezer. Seriously, the mixed vegetable bag. The one that costs almost nothing, sits crammed in every freezer door in every apartment and house in the country. And nobody ever actually plans to buy, because it just feels like it regenerates on the shelf by magic. That exact attitude is the problem. Here is what is actually going on. Those bags are not filled with vegetables grown down the road. A massive chunk of the peas, the diced carrots, the little cubes of green beans in those medley bags get shipped and frozen from overseas. And the trade environment through 2025 has stacked tariff after tariff on imported frozen produce, jacking up the cost for the companies bringing it into the country. The USDA and the Bureau of Labor Statistics have both tracked frozen vegetable prices, climbing significantly above where they sat just a couple of years back. Industry reports through 2025 describe importers specifically scaling back on the multi-vegetable blends, the exact kind Costco sells in those big bags. Now here is how a retailer handles that situation. They do not slap a shortage sticker on the case. They just order less. They trim how many varieties of blend they carry. And they do the oldest retail trick in the book. They slide the remaining bags forward on the hooks so the shelf looks full when it is not. That move, pulling product to the front of an empty rail, is the single most reliable sign that an item is being quietly run down. If you see 4 gaps on a rail that used to hold 12 varieties, you are not looking at a stocking delay. You are looking at a decision that has already been made upstream. The psychology working against you is dead simple. Cheap things feel infinite. Your brain literally will not let you stockpile something that costs $1.50 because it feels absurd. So you wait. And waiting is the one behavior this item punishes. A woman named Carol out in Ohio shops the same warehouse every Tuesday. Months ago, she noticed her favorite blend was there, one week, gone the next. She did not freak out. She just started grabbing 2 bags every time she spotted it. That is the entire strategy. Nothing dramatic, just awareness plus action. And here is the part that should bother you. When mixed vegetables thin out, it does not just mean you are missing a side dish. For a lot of households, that bag is the nutritional backbone of the freezer. It is the thing that turns ramen into a meal, that goes into the casserole, that gets dumped into the soup pot on a Wednesday when nobody feels like cooking from scratch. Losing it does not feel dramatic in the moment, but it quietly degrades the quality of what your family eats. And it happens so slowly, you do not even notice until someone points it out. The bottom line, a bag that costs you almost nothing today is projected to keep climbing, and the product most likely to just not be there is the one you never thought twice about. Buy the boring stuff now. Buy it early. Number 9. Frozen corn here is one nobody is talking about yet, and that is exactly why it belongs on this list. Frozen corn. The workhorse. The side dish that goes with literally everything. The thing you throw into soups, casseroles, quesadillas, and just eat with butter when you do not feel like cooking a real vegetable. It feels indestructible. But corn has a problem most people do not see, and it is not about the corn itself. The United States grows a staggering amount of corn, sure, but the corn that ends up in your frozen bag is sweet corn, which is a completely different crop from the field corn that dominates American agriculture. Sweet corn is a fraction of total acreage, and it competes for processing plant time with every other frozen vegetable that needs blanching, cutting, and flash freezing in the same facilities during the same narrow harvest window. What the data shows is that processing capacity has been under strain. Labor shortages at the plants, energy costs for running the freezing lines, and transportation costs to move the finished product have all been climbing. When a processor's margins get squeezed, they prioritize the items with the best return. And the giant cheap bag of plain frozen corn is not that item. The fancier blends and the organic lines get priority because they carry a higher price tag. Walk the aisle and you will see it. The organic corn, the fire-roasted corn, the specialty stuff holds its shelf space. The massive plain value bag starts showing up spotty. Not gone, not yet, but inconsistent. And inconsistency is stage one of a product quietly getting phased down. There is a woman named Janet in Indiana who noticed the plain frozen corn bag at her Costco went from being a permanent fixture to something she had to check for. She did not change her shopping habits because of a news article. She changed them because the shelf changed first. Now she grabs 2 bags every time it is in stock. Because she learned the hard way that assuming availability is not a strategy. It is just hope, dressed up as a plan. If frozen corn is something your household burns through, grab the big bag when it is there. Do not assume it will be there next week just because it was there last week. The supply chain does not care about your assumptions. If you are getting value out of this so far, take 1 second and hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe. It helps more than you think. Number 8. Frozen wild blueberries. Most people do not understand that there are 2 completely different blueberry supply chains in this country, and only one of them is in trouble. The big plump mild blueberries you see everywhere, those are cultivated. They are farmed on plantations in multiple states and countries. Supply is generally fine. The wild ones are a different animal entirely. Those small, intensely dark, actually taste like something berries in the frozen bag, come from an extremely narrow strip of land in Maine and the Canadian Maritime provinces. You cannot just plant more of them next season. They grow in barrens. They fruit on their own schedule. And that schedule has been brutal lately. Multiple rough seasons back to back. A spring freeze that nailed the buds at precisely the wrong moment. Drought stress across the barrens. The USDA crop data out of Maine documents the wild blueberry harvest swinging violently from year to year. And here is the mechanism nobody pays attention to. When the harvest is small, the fresh market gets served first. Frozen gets whatever scraps are left. So frozen wild blueberries are always the first casualty of a bad harvest. Every single time. Picture the case in January. The cultivated blueberry bags are sitting there. Fine. Plenty of stock. Right next to them is a gap where the wild bag used to be. The little one that people reach for because they actually care about flavor and nutrition. Gone. A guy named Walt, up in Michigan, told his daughter he started keeping 3 bags in the deep freeze at all times after he watched the price spike twice in a single winter. He was not being dramatic. He just ran the numbers. He keeps them buried behind the ice in the coldest corner that never gets opened, because he figured out that wild blueberries are the one item he cannot count on being restocked the week he decides he needs them. This one is already priced like a small luxury, and supply is projected to stay tight. When you see the wild bag at a price that does not make you wince, that is the buy. Do not hold out for a sale. The harvest cannot afford to give you one. Number 7. Frozen French fries. All right, this one sounds ridiculous. I know. French fries. The most indestructible, most automatic food in the entire American diet. The thing that comes free with everything. How on earth could the frozen fry be under pressure? And that reaction, that disbelief, is exactly why this item catches people off guard. Because the vulnerability is not in the potato. It is one step behind the potato. The bag of fries in your freezer is not made from any old spud. It requires a specific processing potato, a long, uniform russet grown under contract for the fry plants. And those contracts have been tightening. Growers have been locking in fewer acres of the processing variety after getting burned by rising costs and bad weather years. And on top of that, the fry plants themselves are energy hogs. Turning a raw potato into a frozen fry requires washing, cutting, blanching, frying in oil, and flash freezing. Every one of those steps runs on energy that has gotten more expensive. The USDA potato stocks reports have shown processing supply running leaner than normal. And the major fry producers have stated publicly on their earnings calls that volume has been under pressure. So the fry is not vanishing because America ran out of potatoes. It is thinning because the exact potato and the affordable energy needed to convert it into a fry are both getting harder to come by at the same time. In the aisle, the pattern is predictable. The premium crinkle cuts, the truffle fries, the specialty shapes hold their shelf space because they carry the margin to survive. The giant 5-pound value bag, the restaurant-style sack that a family of 5 actually lives on week to week, that is the one that starts showing up as an empty slot with a price tag still clipped to the rail, advertising something that is not there. A dad named Marcus down in Texas has 3 teenagers. He told me the fry bag was the first thing he ever intentionally bought in bulk. Not because he is a prepper, but because raising 3 kids taught him what actually disappears from a kitchen. In a lot of American homes, the fry is not a side dish. It is the thing that stretches a small amount of everything else into a full meal a kid will actually eat. When the value sack gets spotty, feeding a family quietly gets harder. And there is a class dimension here that nobody wants to say out loud. The families who depend on the giant value bag are not the same families who buy the truffle Parmesan fries. When the cheap option thins out and the expensive option stays fully stocked, the shortage is not hitting everyone equally. It is hitting the families who can least afford to absorb it. That is not a political statement. It is just math. Grab the big plain bag now. Boring and available beats fancy and gone. Number 6. Frozen cod and pollock now. The story shifts. This is not about weather anymore. This is about a border, a policy decision, and a supply line that got cut while most shoppers were not paying attention. Those breaded fish fillets, the fish stick boxes, the pollock squares. A massive portion of the whitefish flowing through American freezer cases was tied to Russian origin supply, either caught in Russian waters or processed through Russian-connected chains and routed through third countries to get around earlier restrictions. Starting in 2024, the United States shut those workarounds down hard. Executive action and trade rulings through 2024 into 2026 closed the loopholes that had kept Russian-caught fish quietly flowing into American freezers for years. And it did not stop there. On the domestic side, the Bering Sea pollock quotas, America's own pollock fishery, have been cut based on the population surveys. So the backup supply that everyone assumed would just fill the gap is itself smaller than it used to be. 2 doors closing at the same time. Foreign supply blocked by policy. Domestic supply reduced by biology. In the case, the individual premium cod loins hang on because they carry the price to survive a squeeze. The value box, the 20-count breaded fillets, the bulk pollock a family buys for cheap weeknight protein. That is the product that empties because it depended entirely on the cheapest fish on the planet. And the cheapest fish on the planet just had a geopolitical wall dropped in front of it. A retired teacher named Diane, who lives in a fishing town on the Maine coast, told her neighbor she started buying the big pollock box 2 at a time the day she understood the real story was the border, not the ocean. Paperwork moves faster than any fish ever could. No shelf tag will explain it to you, and no store manager will make an announcement. The case just quietly reorganizes itself around the gap, week by week. And I need you to hold on to this one, because it connects to a theme you are going to see repeated through the rest of this list. The threat is not the ocean. The threat is not nature. The threat is a decision made in an office, building thousands of miles from where you shop. And that decision is already signed, already in effect, already working its way through the system. By the time you notice it at the shelf, the cause is months old. You are seeing the tail end of a process that started before you ever thought to look. The cheap protein play is to buy the bulk box now, before the border math finishes working through the system. Quick reminder, if this is landing for you, smash that like button, leave a comment telling me which items you have already noticed thinning, and subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Number 5. Frozen shrimp is the protein people reach for when they want a Tuesday night dinner to feel slightly elevated, and it is quietly turning into a battleground. The shrimp in that big frozen bag at Costco is overwhelmingly imported, farmed overseas, and shipped in from a handful of major exporting countries. And in late 2024, the U.S. government moved aggressively against that import flow. Anti-dumping and countervailing duty rulings landed on shrimp from several of the largest supplier nations. These are essentially taxes slapped on imported shrimp, because American producers argued it was being dumped into the market at unfairly low prices. The U.S. International Trade Commission and the Commerce Department are the agencies behind these rulings, and the 2025 import data shows the total volume of shrimp entering the country stepping down noticeably from the flood that had been the norm for years. Here is what that means at the shelf. Costco moves shrimp in massive value bags, and those bags live and die on the imported price. Raise that price with a duty, and the giant everyday bag is the precise product that gets smaller, gets more expensive, or quietly does not get reordered at the old size. The small premium bags of jumbo shrimp for a date night, those stay. The 2-pound everyday bag that people actually build weeknight meals around, that thins. A nurse named Steve who works 12-hour shifts told me shrimp was his fast protein. The thing he could have on a plate in 6 minutes after a brutal day. The moment he saw the everyday bag jump, he started keeping a backup in the freezer at all times. He portions it into meal-sized bags the day he gets home, so a long shift never ends with an empty freezer and no options. Here is what makes shrimp sneaky. Because it lives in your head as a treat rather than a staple, you never stockpile it. You buy it reactively, only when you have a plan for it. Which means you do not notice it thinning until the specific evening you want it. And by then, the everyday bag has either jumped in price, shrunk in weight, or been swapped out for a smaller, prettier, pricier package that feeds fewer people. That swap, the giant value sack quietly replaced by a premium-looking bag at nearly double the cost per pound, is a shortage wearing a disguise labeled upgrade. The duties are in effect, and import volume is projected to stay suppressed. Every month that goes by with those duties in place, the old pricing gets further away, and the chance of it coming back gets smaller. Grab the value bag now, while the everyday size still exists at an everyday price. Once it flips to the premium-only selection, it is not flipping back. Number 4. Frozen edamame and stir-fry blends. Here is another one that has been sliding under the radar while everyone focuses on the proteins. Frozen edamame, the shelled soybeans people toss into stir-fries and rice bowls and eat as a snack, and the frozen stir-fry vegetable blends that pair with them. These are almost entirely imported from East Asia, and they are sitting squarely in the crosshairs of the same tariff escalation that is hitting everything else on this list. The landed cost of importing these products has been climbing steadily. Freight rates, tariff adjustments, and currency shifts have all pushed the cost up at the port, and that cost increase is working its way through the system. The stir-fry blends are particularly vulnerable because, just like the mixed vegetable bags, they require multiple ingredients from multiple sources, and every additional ingredient is another point where cost pressure or supply disruption can enter the chain. What you will notice in the case is subtle. The edamame bags might still be there, but the variety shrinks. The store carries fewer options. The organic version might disappear first. The stir-fry blends that used to come in 5 or 6 varieties consolidate down to 2 or 3. It is not dramatic. It is just quieter selection and slightly higher prices, the kind of change that does not trigger alarm bells until you realize you have been unconsciously adjusting your meals around what is available instead of what you actually wanted to cook. A college student named Priya in California told me edamame was basically her main protein source for 2 years. Cheap, fast, healthy, always there. She started noticing her preferred brand disappearing and getting replaced by a smaller bag from a different brand at a higher price per ounce. She did not make a big deal about it. She just started buying 2 bags at a time and keeping the backup in her mini freezer. No drama, just pattern recognition plus 1 extra purchase per trip. If stir-fry bowls or plant-based protein are a regular part of your household rotation, start paying attention to which blends and edamame products are consistently in stock and which are getting spotty. When you see your preferred one, grab it. The import math on these products is not getting friendlier anytime soon. The tariff environment is tightening, not loosening. And every week that passes without a reversal is another week the old prices drift further out of reach. Number 3. Frozen king and snow crab. This one is not a warning about the future. This one already happened. And it is the most savage example on this entire list of how fast an entire food can just vanish from existence. For years, the Bering Sea snow crab fishery was one of the great reliable seafood supplies in America. Billions of crab, enough to keep freezer cases stocked from coast to coast. And then, in the span of just a few seasons, the population surveys came back, and those billions of crab were simply gone. Not fished out slowly over decades the way you imagine overfishing works. Gone. A collapse so sudden and so catastrophic that NOAA and Alaska's fishery managers did something nearly unprecedented. They shut the snow crab season down entirely, canceled it. A fishery that fed the country just stopped. That is not a price problem. That is there is no product problem. When a fishery closes, the freezer case does not empty overnight because there is still frozen inventory and cold storage stock working its way through the pipeline. But that inventory is a countdown clock with nothing at the other end. Every single bag of crab legs sold from a closed fishery is one that never gets replaced. So the price climbs into genuine luxury territory and the selection collapses to almost nothing. King crab hangs on because someone will always pay top dollar. The everyday snow crab cluster, the one families used to buy for a special Sunday dinner without taking out a loan, becomes a memory. A grandmother named Gloria, who hosts every holiday dinner, told her family she bought crab the last 2 Decembers, not for the meal she was about to serve, but for the freezer, because she understood that a closed season means the clock is already counting down. She freezes the legs standing upright so they hold their shape. And she talks about that freezer the way people used to talk about a stocked pantry during a hard winter. Not as indulgence, as insurance. And here is the part of the crab story that should genuinely unsettle you. The scientists are not entirely sure why the population collapsed as fast as it did. There are theories: warming water temperatures in the Bering Sea, disease, ecosystem shifts. But the speed of it caught even the biologists off guard, when the experts who study an animal for a living are surprised by how fast it vanished. That should recalibrate how you think about the word reliable when applied to any food supply that comes from a natural system. This is the item that should rewire how you think about everything else on this list. Crab is the proof of concept. It is the food that already completed the full journey from getting pricier to legally cannot be harvested in a time frame that stunned everyone watching. What is in cold storage now is essentially all there is. The price will keep climbing as it drains. If crab means something to your table, buy it when you see it, and accept that waiting is a gamble the ocean already told you not to take. Before we hit the final 2, do me a favor. Like, comment, subscribe. Takes 3 seconds, and it makes sure more people see this before the shelf tells a story for me. Number 2. Frozen wild Alaska salmon. You cannot fully understand the last item on this list without understanding this one first. Because salmon is where the everyday shopper finally feels the same squeeze that the crab shoppers already felt. Wild Alaska salmon is supposed to be the dependable one. The clean, healthy, always available protein that health-conscious families build their diets around. But the runs have not been cooperating. Alaska's fishery managers projected sockeye returns in key regions coming in well below the big numbers of recent years. And simultaneously, a price collapse at the dock pushed some fishermen to simply not go out. They tied up their boats rather than fish at a loss. Sit with that contradiction for a second, because it is the strange engine driving this shortage. The price the fishermen receive crashed, which sounds like it should mean cheap, abundant salmon for everyone. But it actually means fewer boats on the water, less fish caught, and less product making it into the frozen case where you shop. Less money for the fishermen does not mean more fish for you. It means less of everything. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game publishes these forecasts, and the pattern they describe is a supply that is getting less predictable year over year. That unpredictability is exactly what makes a retailer nervous about committing to large frozen volume. In the case, it shows up as wild-caught fillets, the sockeye and coho, getting scarcer and pricier while farmed Atlantic salmon quietly takes over more and more of the shelf space. That swap is the entire warning. If you specifically want wild, your options are shrinking. A retired firefighter named Ray out in Washington State told his son he started buying an extra wild fillet every single trip and freezing it flat in individual portions. He labels each one with a date so the oldest gets eaten first. He says the wild sockeye has a deep, true red that the farm stuff can only fake with feed additives. And that is precisely why he refuses to let his family get quietly downgraded without a fight. The swap from wild to farmed never comes with an announcement. It happens one shelf facing at a time. A little more Atlantic salmon each month, a little less sockeye. Until one day the wild option is simply not in your store anymore, and you cannot pinpoint the moment it left. And do not let anyone tell you the farm stuff is just as good. That is a separate debate, and reasonable people can land on different sides of it. But the point here is not about which is better. The point is about choice. Right now, you still have the option to buy wild. That option is narrowing, whether you care about that distinction or not. The fact that the market is making the decision for you, quietly, without asking, should bother you on principle. Because once the wild option leaves your store, it is not coming back just because you want it to. Wild supply is projected to stay volatile. If wild is the standard you hold for your family, stock the freezer while you still get to choose. Number 1. Frozen orange juice concentrate. Here it is. The item sitting at a level this country has not seen in approximately 60 years. And it is the perfect way to end this list, because it is the product you would never, not in a million years, put at the top of a shortage warning. Orange juice. The most ordinary breakfast beverage in America. The thing that has been in freezers since your grandparents were young. And yet the orange behind it is in a genuine, documented, no-spin crisis. Florida's citrus groves have been hit by a 1-2 combination that has no quick fix and no workaround. First, a bacterial disease called citrus greening that has been slowly strangling the trees for years, killing groves from the inside out with no known cure. Then hurricanes ripping through whatever groves were left standing. The USDA's own citrus production forecasts have described Florida's orange crop falling to its lowest output since the 1930s. In some measurements, it is a 90-year low. The fruit is simply not there to squeeze. That is the 60-year number I told you about at the very beginning. And now you know exactly where it lives. Frozen orange juice concentrate is the canary in this coal mine, because concentrate is what gets produced when there is a surplus of oranges to preserve. When the oranges themselves are at a historic low, the concentrate is the very first product that stops getting manufactured at the old volumes. The mechanism is as simple and as brutal as it gets. No surplus oranges, no cheap concentrate. So that can of frozen concentrate, that decades-old kitchen staple your grandparents kept in the freezer door as a default, is quietly transforming into a specialty item. The price climbing while the shelf space contracts, getting replaced by pricier not-from-concentrate cartons that carry the exact same shortage baked into their supply chain. A woman named Eleanor, who has kept frozen concentrate in her freezer door since the 1970s, told her granddaughter she started buying a few extra cans the day she read that Florida's crop had hit a low not seen in her entire adult life. She was not hoarding. She was refusing to be caught off guard. She keeps them in the door next to the ice trays, and she says opening that freezer feels like proof that some things can still be counted on if you pay attention early enough. And here is the kicker that makes this even worse. Brazil, which is the world's other major orange producer, has also been dealing with drought and disease in its groves. So the global backup that might have softened the blow from Florida's collapse is itself under stress. There is no cavalry coming over the hill on this one. The two biggest orange-producing regions on the planet are both struggling at the same time. And the frozen concentrate can is sitting right at the intersection of both problems. That is what makes this the right item to end on. Not because orange juice is the most critical food in your freezer, but because it is the absolute last thing you would ever expect to be in trouble. And if the most ordinary breakfast in America can quietly hit a low not seen since your grandparents were young, then permanence was always the illusion. That is the entire thesis of this list, sitting right in front of you. The pattern behind all 10 step back and look at what every single one of these items shares. Because it is not bad weather. It is not random bad luck. Every one is a situation where the supply was decided somewhere you cannot see. By a tariff. By a border policy. By a disease with no cure. By a fishery closure. By a failing grove. By an energy bill at a processing plant. The decision about whether this food would be on your shelf was made long before it ever reached your store. That decision is done. It is already locked in. The only thing that has not been decided yet is whether you act on the information before the shelf tells the story, or whether you show up after it is too late and learn the lesson from an empty metal rail with a price tag still clipped to it advertising something that no longer exists. Here is the order that makes practical sense. On your very next trip, grab the 2 items that move first and store easiest, the mixed vegetables and the French fries. The trip after that, take on the proteins with the longest replacement timelines, the cod and pollock, the shrimp, the crab, and the wild salmon. And the 2 that are already structurally short right now, the wild blueberries and the orange juice concentrate. Buy those the moment you see them at a price that does not sting. 1 rule: buy them the moment you spot them at a price you can live with. Do not wait for a sale the supply chain cannot afford to offer you. Think back to the 2 types of households I described at the start. One just heard the warning. The other is going to learn it from an empty freezer case next year. And by that point, the only thing left to purchase is regret. You get to decide which household you are. And you get to decide it on your next trip, not someday. Last ask: like, comment, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments which of these items is already thin at your local Costco, because the people watching need to know which shelf is emptying first in their town.